Have you ever wondered why some men never hesitate, never flinch, never retreat? Why, when everyone else is pausing, do they move forward with terrifying clarity? The answer isn't luck, talent, or even power. It's this: they've removed the option to quit. Stoic philosophers believed that real strength begins the moment you stop negotiating with fear. The moment you cut the rope behind you and burn the map. You don't become unstoppable by adding more motivation. You become unstoppable by removing the back door. The truth is, most men are not weak. They're undecided. They keep Plan B alive, just in case. But that silent, just in case, is what's killing your drive. You can't command your mind when you whisper doubt in the dark. This video is not here to hype you up. It's here to help you see clearly what must be done, to reclaim your identity, remove distraction, and build a mindset that doesn't retreat. You're not alone in this internal conflict. Many men feel it, most ignore it. But not you, not anymore. If you've ever felt stuck, scattered, or secretly unsure of your path, this is your moment to choose clarity over confusion, finality over flexibility. We'll explore the Stoic strategies that have shaped some of the most resilient men in history, and how you can live them, one irreversible decision at a time. Like this video if it resonates. Subscribe to the channel if you're ready to burn the ships and take the hill. This is where your mind gets rewired. Welcome. 1. The subconscious obeys finality, not confusion. He doesn't hesitate. He doesn't revisit the decision once it's made. He moves like someone who has already chosen. You can see it in how he walks, how he speaks, and how he doesn't explain himself. His strength isn't loud. It's silent, deliberate. That kind of clarity isn't born from motivation. It's the product of mental discipline trained over the years. He doesn't carry backup plans. He doesn't prepare for failure. He simply acts like the outcome is already inevitable. At the heart of every truly unstoppable man is a single unshakable trait: finality. And what most people don't understand is that finality isn't the absence of options. It's the removal of permission to reconsider. The subconscious mind does not thrive on flexibility. It thrives on order. It obeys direction. It requires clarity like lungs require air. If you leave even one exit unlocked, your subconscious will notice. It will hold back just enough energy, just enough focus, just enough belief to keep failure quietly alive in the background. This is where most men lose their edge. Not because they lack talent, not because they don't want it enough, but because they never fully committed. Every time you say, "I'll try," or "let's see how it goes," you're sending mixed signals to the most powerful force you have, your own mind. And a mind confused by its own commander will never lead you anywhere worth going. In Stoic philosophy, clarity is a virtue. Marcus Aurelius didn't ask if he should lead during the plague or war. He led because it was required. He saw action not as something to weigh endlessly, but as a function of reason aligned with duty. For the Stoics, mental strength didn't come from certainty in outcome, but from certainty in purpose. The mind must be given a singular instruction. This is what we do, and nothing else. Picture a man waking up at 5 a.m., not because he enjoys the hour, but because he has given himself the command to build something that matters. His body moves before his thoughts catch up. His routine isn't exciting, it's enforced. He doesn't negotiate with the alarm clock. And by doing this long enough, day after day, he begins to build an identity that no longer requires external push. His mind no longer debates direction, it follows it. Most men sabotage themselves with phrases that seem harmless. "I hope this works. If not, I'll figure something else out." These are not strategies, they are exit signs, and the subconscious sees them for exactly what they are: permission to retreat when pressure shows up. Over time, this softens the edge of your will. You move more slowly, you hesitate more, you become addicted to checking instead of committing. The mind loses its structure, and confusion takes command. A Stoic does not speak in maybe, he speaks in must. He doesn't say, "I'll try to be disciplined." He says, "I am disciplined," and then acts in alignment with that identity. The difference isn't in effort, it's in instruction. Your mind is waiting for clarity. If it doesn't receive it, it will revert to the last loud voice it heard, which is often fear. So what does this mean in practice? Begin your day not with tasks, but with a single, non-negotiable order. something real, simple, and direct. Write it down. I will complete this without exception. Then protect that statement like it's sacred. Don't explain it. Don't water it down. Don't apologize for it. The power comes not from shouting it, but from refusing to question it once it's written. Burn the word maybe from your vocabulary. Replace I hope with I choose. Replace I'll try with I do. The man who reclaims command over his own mind doesn't need motivation. He doesn't need perfect timing. He needs only a clear instruction and the discipline to enforce it. From now on, let every decision carry weight. Let every sentence be clean. Let every step be unflinching. Your mind, when led with clarity, becomes something no setback can shake. When it obeys one voice, it no longer listens to fear. That is how unstoppable men are built, not with more noise, but with fewer doubts. 2. Burn the ships. Commitment over comfort. Some men don't return because they never left themselves a way back. They know the cost of keeping the exit open. They understand that when comfort remains an option, greatness never becomes a necessity. That's why the man who rises doesn't wait until he feels ready. He moves when the bridge behind him is already burning. To burn the ships isn't a metaphor for recklessness. It's a metaphor for clarity. It means cutting off every escape that allows you to abandon the version of yourself you swore to outgrow. And when comfort no longer protects you, something raw and unfiltered begins to rise. That's commitment, not excitement, not motivation, but the quiet decision to go forward even when ease invites you to stay. In our culture, the idea of having a backup plan is sold as wisdom. We're told to diversify our focus, hedge our bets, and never put everything in one place. But that advice, while seemingly practical, often becomes a disguised permission to remain undecided. When your identity is split between your mission and your safety net, your energy will always leak toward the softer option. Now imagine this: a craftsman building a boat on a quiet dock, alone at dawn. The water's cold, the wind cuts, but the work continues, every morning without fail. He's not trying different hobbies to see which one sticks. He's building because the sea is waiting and there is no other way to cross. The tools are simple, but the decision is final. He does not need a guarantee. He needs no applause, only wood, steel, and the discipline to finish. Stoic philosophy speaks to this kind of man. Epictetus asked, "How long will you wait before you demand the best for yourself?" He didn't mean waiting for an opportunity. He meant demanding the best by choosing it once and closing every door behind it. To a Stoic, discomfort is not a sign of danger. It's a signal that you're finally standing where growth happens. They believe strength is not built by preparing for retreat, but by stepping where only courage can carry you. This is where most people stop. They say, "What if it fails?" They keep just enough of their old life intact, just in case. But in doing so, they dilute their own authority. Your mind can't give you power when you haven't made the path irreversible. Burning the ships means deciding that your old excuses no longer get to travel with you, that the softer version of you has no seat on this next journey. Action demands weight, and weight comes from cutting the rope, not holding it. When you wake up tomorrow, don't just write a to-do list. Write a decision, something that pushes against the walls of your comfort. Then follow it without consulting your feelings. Every time you act with no escape, the muscle of your will grows sharper. Your identity begins to shift, not because the work gets easier, but because your exit strategy no longer whispers in your mind. The truth most men avoid is simple. They want change, but they also want comfort, and you don't get both. The Stoics knew this. That's why they practiced voluntary discomfort. They exposed themselves to cold hunger and simplicity. Not to suffer, but to remind the body who was in command. They burned the ships by removing the idea that pleasure equals progress. Today, burning the ships might mean deleting the plan B you keep revisiting, quitting the job you're only half present in, or committing to the path that scares you because it exposes who you really are. It doesn't require fireworks. It requires silence and precision, and the willingness to say, "This is the only direction I go now." You don't need more time, you need fewer exits. The real threshold is reached when you stop asking for proof and start moving as if the outcome has already submitted to your will. That's what separates the ones who watch from the ones who finish. Not courage in the moment, but commitment with no permission to return. 3. No retreat builds mental strength. No retreat means no hesitation. No exit means full engagement. That is where true mental strength begins. Not in the absence of fear, but in the refusal to leave space for it to grow. A man becomes unshakable not by preparing to win, but by removing the option to escape. And once the door behind him is locked, everything in him sharpens. Mental strength is not bravado. It is not chest beating or loud declarations. It is quiet, invisible force. The kind forged when no alternatives are left. Stoicism understood this better than any philosophy. Strength was not something you were born with. It was something you became when your actions refused to be negotiated by comfort. When you stop giving your mind permission to retreat, it begins to harden into clarity. You see it in the man who walks into the storm without second-guessing. Not because he enjoys the pain, but because he knows that only the storm can clean him of the weakness he refuses to carry forward. He's not fearless. He just knows fear cannot survive where there is no exit. His strength comes not from certainty and success, but from his decision to continue regardless. Most men make room for collapse, not openly, but quietly. They tell themselves, if this doesn't work, I'll figure something else out. They leave behind a part of their will, just in case. They don't burn their fallback, they protect it. But what they're really protecting is their right to give up should the pressure become too real. And pressure will come. It always does. Pressure is the test, not of your potential, but of your decision. If you've left yourself a way out, pressure will expose it. Your energy will leak toward it. Your belief will hesitate, and your actions will soften, just enough to make failure feel acceptable. But when no retreat exists, the mind is forced to use strength it didn't know it had. Stoic wisdom was built for these moments. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." The imagined outcome, loss, rejection, embarrassment, is often more damaging than the reality itself. That's why Stoics train the mind not to expect comfort, but to command behavior in the face of adversity. The Stoic man doesn't act because the conditions are right. He acts because the decision was made. And that's final. Picture this: a man who's lost his job but refuses to spiral into bitterness. He wakes up every day at the same time, dresses with purpose, and builds his own routine of progress, study, training, planning, not because he has to impress anyone, but because he refuses to collapse. No one is watching, but he's building anyway, not out of hope, but out of principle. This is not about glamorizing suffering. It's about recognizing that growth rarely shows up in peace. It shows up when you've got your back to the wall and you choose forward. The man who removes the retreat burns away the weakness that only ever survived because it had permission to stay. To build mental strength like this, stop waiting for the right mindset to show up. Start building it by removing everything that gives you the option to wait. Close the tabs in your mind that say someday, maybe, we'll see. Choose, commit, eliminate the plan B that comforts you. Burn the timeline that lets you delay. You want real strength? Lock yourself into the path, not by shouting, by enforcing. Train when you don't feel like it. Speak the truth when it's uncomfortable. Walk away from ease when no one will clap for you, not because it's impressive, but because it's required. Let every step you take be a vote for who you're becoming, not who you're protecting. You don't need a new strategy. You need to stop making failure acceptable. That begins the moment you close the escape and keep walking. Without a rear view, without a cushion. That's where you find out who you really are, and that's where your strength begins. 4. Split intentions. Kill momentum. Moving in two directions at once is the fastest way to stay stuck. You say you want progress, but you're still holding space for your escape. You say you've chosen, but your energy is divided. You're building something with one hand and pulling it apart with the other. That's why it's not working. That's why your momentum never lasts. Not because you're incapable, but because you're not aligned. Split intention is the silent killer of drive. And unlike failure, which teaches, or fear, which challenges, split intention confuses. It makes your efforts weak, your mind cluttered, your actions indecisive. You hesitate more often, you delay what needs doing, you revisit decisions already made, and then you wonder why you're tired all the time. It's not the effort that drains you. It's the conflict. The Stoics didn't chase every path. They understood the power of channeling everything through one direction. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to focus only on what's essential and to eliminate everything else, not because he lacked options, but because too many options dilute purpose. A life split between desire and doubt leads to paralysis. You cannot walk two roads with one set of legs. You must choose. This is what most men today struggle with. They try to succeed while also preparing for failure. They say they're committed to building a business, but they keep the old job just in case. They claim they want a disciplined life, but continue entertaining distractions that sabotage consistency. They want transformation, but they refuse to let go of the identity that's slowly dying. You can't build a new self while protecting the old one. Now imagine a man waking up every morning at 4:30 a.m., not because he's a morning person, but because he's committed to changing the architecture of his habits. His phone is on airplane mode. He doesn't check it until after he's trained, journaled, and moved his body. He's not living two identities. He's not half invested. He's all in. And that's what makes his routine stick, not perfection, not willpower, alignment. In the Stoic sense, this is what they call inner harmony. Your reason, your action, your word, all in agreement. That's where momentum is born, not from doing more, but from removing the friction caused by contradiction. When your internal dialogue matches your external behavior, energy flows freely. No leak, no delay, no second guessing. The mind, like a soldier, follows orders, but only when those orders are clear. If your intention is "I'll try," your subconscious hears indecision. If it's "I'll do it unless it's hard," your subconscious hears retreat. But if your command is final, your actions follow. Your body moves without emotional debate. You stop wondering and you begin walking. Most people don't suffer from a lack of goals. They suffer from a lack of unity. They set a vision, then sabotage it by allowing exceptions. And those exceptions multiply until the goal becomes optional. That's why clarity beats ambition. That's why focus beats intensity. Because consistency is not a feeling. It's the result of singular focus. To correct this, begin with one brutally honest question. Where in your life are you saying one thing but doing another? Don't fix the surface, fix the split. Choose what matters. Then eliminate the false commitments, the maybe promises, the just-in-case narratives. Stop writing multiple scripts for your life and expecting a coherent story. And when you've chosen, speak differently. Act differently. Structure your day like your direction is permanent. Give your energy nowhere else to go. Momentum builds when the full force of your time, your thoughts, and your habits face one way and one way only. That's the edge you've been missing. Not another tactic. Not another mindset hack, just one quiet, final decision to unify. When you stop feeding both the dream and the doubt, one of them dies, and the one that lives becomes unstoppable. 5. No plan B is not motivation, it's identity. No plan B is not a strategy. It is not a mindset trick, it's identity. It's the line where you stop entertaining other versions of yourself and begin embodying the only one that matters, the one that finishes. Until you reach that line, you're still negotiating with doubt, with comfort, with the old life that never required your full strength. He doesn't keep options open. He doesn't browse alternatives late at night. He doesn't tell himself, "We'll see." He walks in one direction and burns everything else along the way. Not to prove anything, not to be seen, but because his identity has already shifted. The man who finishes does not wait for belief. He enforces it by refusing to fragment his attention. That is why he doesn't need motivation. He doesn't run on mood, he runs on alignment. To live without a plan B is to let your present actions be ruled by who you're becoming, not who you've been. The man who carries fallback plans is still loyal to the version of himself that retreats. And loyalty has weight. You can't serve two identities. You can't build the future while whispering back to your past that it's still an option. Stoic philosophy calls this living in accordance with logos, your highest reason, your clearest principle. When Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do," he wasn't offering a motivational quote. He was issuing an identity command. You don't become disciplined by doing disciplined things. You do disciplined things because you have already decided that you are that man. That decision comes first. Action only confirms it, but most men flip the order. They wait to feel ready before committing. They want more evidence before they remove the net. And so they stay trapped in a version of themselves that hesitates. They make partial decisions and then wonder why their results never lock in. The answer is simple. You cannot act with power when you still speak like a tourist in your own life. If your language says maybe, your actions will follow. If your mind says just in case, your body will move like it has options. And options, when too many, dilute identity. You don't need more drive. You need closure. You need to bury the version of yourself that depended on backup plans. You need to declare your role and then live inside it without checking the door. The man who deletes his fallback doesn't act out of desperation, he acts out of devotion. Because he knows that until he removes the safety net, he will never discover what he truly carries. It's not about being reckless. It's about being irreversible. The difference is everything. The first takes you to chaos. The second takes you to clarity. When you operate without plan B, you build systems that are self-sustaining. You design your routines to survive storms. You don't skip reps. You don't delay decisions because you can't afford to. And over time, this pressure sharpens you into someone who no longer needs reminders to act because he no longer sees another way. Visualize a man sitting at his desk at 6 a.m., lights off, 1 cup of coffee, his goals handwritten, no noise, no phone, no scrolling. He's not interested in variety. He's interested in victory. And he knows that victory has no room for indecision. His days are not glamorous, but they are absolute. And that's what makes them powerful. To practice this, start by writing a sentence that removes the option. 1 sentence. I am not available for excuses. I don't revisit decisions already made. This is my only path. Say it. Live it. Repeat it every morning. Not to impress, but to integrate. Speak it like you've already paid for it. And soon, you will no longer be someone searching for power. You'll be someone who has stopped bleeding it away. Identity isn't built by trying harder. It's built by deciding deeper. When you eliminate escape, you don't just act differently. You become different. And in that shift, everything else aligns. 6. Fear lives where escape exists. Fear thrives in open doors. Not in the obvious kind, but the ones we quietly leave cracked, just in case. The truth most avoid is that fear doesn't require violence to win. It only needs a back door. It only needs you to say, if this doesn't work, I'll try something else. That sentence doesn't sound like fear. But it is. That is how it survives. That is how it multiplies. A man begins to rise the moment he removes the path of retreat. Not because the pressure goes away, but because the pressure becomes pure. When you cut the line that leads back to safety, fear loses its leverage. It has nothing left to bargain with. It cannot trap a man who no longer runs. Fear in its true form is not the loud panic most think of. It's quiet. It hides behind logic. It serves as a caution. It uses words like smart, prudent, and prepared. But in truth, it's the architecture of hesitation. It's the well-designed delay, and it lives in your mind as long as you offer it a room. Stoicism never promised fear would disappear, but it taught that fear cannot exist where control begins. And control begins when you stop building exits. Epictetus never spoke of mastering outcomes, only mastering self-command. His core belief was simple. You cannot always control what happens, but you can always control your response. But here's what's often missed. Your response begins long before the moment of impact. It starts in the structure you built beforehand. If you've allowed your mind to believe escape is possible, your reaction will always be weakened. Think of a firefighter charging into a collapsing building. He doesn't ask if he's ready. He's trained for one outcome: forward. Every breath, every second is movement toward the target. He's not negotiating with risk. He already closed that conversation. That's why he moves when others freeze. Not because he's fearless, but because fear has nowhere left to live. Now bring it back to your own life. Look at the decisions you've postponed, not because you're incapable, but because you've left room for later. You've said, when things calm down. You've said, when I feel more prepared. That's fear using your own voice. That's fear reminding you that the door is still open. And the longer you leave it open, the more comfortable you get with the idea of standing still. To act like a Stoic is not to eliminate fear, it's to rob it of shelter, to remove the conditions that give it breath. You don't fight fear by shouting at it. You dissolve it by shutting down the systems that keep it alive. Second-guessing, soft timelines, half decisions. A Stoic burns the ship not for drama, but for clarity. Because when retreat no longer exists, your energy has only one direction. You don't build courage by feeling brave. You build it by eliminating escape. Start with one area of your life where you've left the back door unlocked. It could be the second job you keep, just in case your business fails. The relationship you never really end. The habit you say you'll fix after things settle. Find it, circle it, then close it. When you do that, something begins to shift. Your thoughts tighten, your senses sharpen, your commitment hardens, and suddenly the decision you kept avoiding no longer feels overwhelming. It feels necessary, because now it has no rival. Fear isn't defeated in one grand battle, it dies in silence over time as you starve it of exits. The man who becomes truly dangerous is not the one who acts with arrogance, but the one who acts with finality. Not the one who shouts with confidence, but the one who no longer checks for escape. To live like this, you don't need more time. You need fewer options. You need to stop preparing for collapse and start eliminating the conditions that cause it. Because the moment you remove the exit, your mind stops asking for relief and starts looking for resolve. And that's when fear begins to fade. Not because you fought it, but because you stopped feeding it. 7. Real decision is real power. A decision is not a thought, it's not a preference. It's not a possibility you revisit later when the pressure fades. A real decision is final. It draws a hard line through your hesitation and tells your life which direction to go. That kind of decision carries weight, not because you feel good about it, but because you've removed the option to reverse it. Real power begins where retreat ends. He doesn't ask again. He doesn't circle back for second opinions. He doesn't explain why he chose what he chose. He simply moves. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. And it's rare. Most men today confuse flexibility with freedom. They call it keeping options open. But freedom without direction is drift. The man who chooses completely and without return gains something far more valuable than choice. He gains force. In Stoic philosophy, decision is sacred. It's not emotional. It's structural. Seneca wrote, "A man who suffers before it is necessary, suffers more than is necessary." When you delay decisions, you don't buy time. You buy anxiety. You stretch the weight of the unknown across too many days. And in doing so, you weaken your ability to act with strength when it matters most. Think about it. The leader who doesn't hesitate becomes the compass for others. Not because he's always right, but because he's clear. Henry Ford built an empire, not by knowing more, but by refusing to be moved by external noise. He made one decision, held it, and built systems around it. That's how his mind became magnetic. Not because he had more information, but because he had less confusion. Now look at your own life. How many things are you still deciding? How many areas have you told yourself not yet, but revisit every other day with the same doubt? That's not evaluation. That's erosion. You're burning energy not in pursuit of clarity, but in avoidance of responsibility. And the longer you wait, the heavier it becomes. Not because the task got harder, but because you let the indecision rot your strength. A real decision is not about confidence. It's about command. You make it, and then you adjust everything else to follow it. You don't ask your feelings for permission. You don't wait for motivation to back you up. You move. Then you correct in motion. Stoic men didn't pray for perfect conditions. They made the conditions irrelevant by choosing ahead of time who they would be inside them. Picture a man staring at a blank whiteboard. He's tried to launch a business for years. He knows what he wants to build, but he keeps waiting. Perfect name, perfect plan, perfect time. And it never arrives. Then one day he deletes the entire list of ideas, writes one phrase in the middle of that board. "I will finish what I start." And then he begins. No more questions, no more drafts, just movement, enforced daily. That's what a real decision looks like. It doesn't require shouting. It doesn't beg for validation. It just moves forward with such intensity that everything around it has to adjust. When you live like that, the world no longer drags you, it starts reacting to you. Not because you're better, but because you've stopped being unsure. To practice this, take one unresolved decision you've carried for too long. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Make the call. Not by how you feel, but by who you've committed to becoming. Write it down, and from that moment, act like the decision cannot be undone. Structure your time, speech, and behavior around it. Let it be final. Let it be enforced. Let it reshape you. Power doesn't come from knowing what to do. It comes from finally deciding that you're done asking. When you reach that point, everything inside you begins to shift. Not because the road got easier, but because you no longer entertain another one. That's how clarity becomes muscle. That's how men become unstoppable. 8. Speech shapes subconscious power. Words build structure. They don't just communicate ideas, they issue orders to the subconscious. And those orders shape identity, behavior, and belief. That's why every unstoppable man watches his language like a weapon, because he knows it doesn't take a loud voice to lose your edge. It only takes soft words, spoken too often. You hear it everywhere. I hope this works. Let's try and see. Maybe next time. These phrases don't sound harmful, but they carry hesitation. And hesitation is contagious, not just to others, but to your own mind. The subconscious doesn't obey intentions, it obeys clarity. And when your words signal doubt, your mind adjusts its energy accordingly. It slows down, it holds back, it softens its fire. Not because it wants to quit, but because you gave it permission. The man who moves with force never speaks like he's waiting. He speaks as if it's already decided. Not because he's arrogant, but because his speech follows his identity. He doesn't say, I'll try to be disciplined. He says, I train every day. He doesn't say, I'm working on it. He says, I'm doing it now. This is not motivational fluff, it's functional psychology. You don't build confidence through hype. You build it by removing verbal confusion from your mental environment. In Stoicism, this principle runs deep. Marcus Aurelius wrote daily not to be eloquent, but to command his mind. He spoke to himself in brief, strong, clear language, not for others to read, but to eliminate the fog. Clarity of speech was clarity of thought, and clarity of thought was the root of right action. The Stoics didn't say much, but when they did, it moved nations, because each sentence was weighted with finality, not fluff. Picture a man running laps in the dark, whispering a sentence every time his foot hits the ground. I do hard things. I finish what I start. He's not yelling it, he's installing it. Not into the air, but into his wiring. That's how the mind rewires. Not with noise, with repetition. Repeated input becomes truth, and your truth becomes the structure your body moves within. This is where most men sabotage their transformation. They do the work, but they don't change their language, so their mind never gets the message. They say, one day I'll stop being this way, and so the brain waits. It hears that today isn't the day, and every time that phrase is repeated, it hardens that waiting into identity. You don't get what you want. You get what you repeatedly say you are. That's why you must start speaking as if the version of you you're becoming has already taken control. Stop announcing your uncertainty like a disclaimer. Stop narrating your fears out loud. You're not required to broadcast your doubts, to be honest. Honesty isn't vulnerability without filter. It's precision without illusion. Say only what builds. Say only what aligns. Say only what supports the structure you are stepping into. To put this into action, audit your vocabulary for the next 24 hours. Don't fix anything, just observe. Write down every time you say, I'll try, maybe, hopefully, or I don't know. At the end of the day, cross each phrase out. Next to it, write its replacement. One that's simple, clear, non-negotiable. Turn I'll try to wake up early into I get up at 5. Turn I want to be more focused into I train my focus daily. It may feel like a lie at first. That's because your identity hasn't caught up yet. But the subconscious doesn't care about how you feel. It cares about what you repeat. And once you repeat it long enough, it obeys. You move differently. You think cleaner. You stop offering disclaimers for your effort. Because you've stopped weakening your commands. Speech isn't filler, it's formation. And the man who watches his words closely will find that his mind follows. Not because he shouted, but because he stopped whispering defeat into the system. That's how power is installed, quietly, repeatedly, precisely. 9. Finality is the beginning of a new man. Finality doesn't end something, it initiates something else. The moment you stop leaving things open, you stop being who you were. You don't just change your habits, you shed an entire identity. And that shedding doesn't happen through motivation or planning. It happens when you eliminate the option of becoming anyone but the version you've already chosen to become. This is not a mindset, it's a point of no return. The line you draw, not to try harder, but to never again look back. A man who steps into this space doesn't just act differently, he sees differently. He speaks, moves, and chooses like someone who no longer asks for clarity because he already gave it to himself. You recognize him not by how loud he is, but by how final he is. His decisions don't echo with uncertainty. They land with weight because they're already complete. In Stoicism, this is the core of prohairesis, the rational will made visible. Seneca didn't say to hope for growth. He said to decide as if today is the whole of life. You act not for a reward, not for attention, but because your standard has been reset and you've sworn not to drop beneath it. That kind of commitment doesn't happen when you feel ready. It happens when you close the doors you've left open to weakness. Most people never reach finality because they confuse effort with transformation. They keep trying, adjusting, revising, thinking if they just tweak one more thing, they'll get it right. But transformation doesn't come from more effort. It comes from total direction. From locking into a version of yourself so tightly that every move you make supports that identity or gets removed. Picture a man who's been dragging a goal behind him for years. He journals, he reads, he plans. But every day, he reopens the decision. Every week, he revisits whether he really wants it. Then one morning, without drama or announcement, he erases everything that doesn't lead to that outcome. Apps, habits, relationships, excuses, all cut. Not because he's angry, but because he's done negotiating. That's when transformation begins. Not when you start moving faster, but when you stop allowing backward motion. This kind of finality isn't harsh. It's clean. It doesn't scream. It simplifies. And that's what makes it dangerous. You don't waste energy juggling choices. You don't waste hours thinking about what if. You act, and everything in your life must now submit to the version of you who no longer offers compromise. Stoic philosophy teaches this not by emotion, but by architecture. Build your life like a fortress. No unnecessary doorways, no weak hinges, no entry for the past self you already buried. Finality is the foundation of that structure. You can't build strength if you're still designing escape routes. If you want to apply this, stop asking what you should start doing. Ask what you need to stop reopening. Which decision needs to be sealed now, not with fanfare, but with structure. Block the path, delete the file, end the story. Do it not because it's easy, but because your mind is watching. It knows when you're serious. It knows when the door is still cracked. Once you reach finality, urgency changes. It stops being frantic. It becomes sharp, focused, silent. You no longer wait to feel like the new version of yourself. You behave like him until reality has no choice but to agree. You are no longer building slowly. You are becoming swiftly. That's how the new man emerges. Not with a spark, but with a lock. You lock in your decisions, your routines, your standards, and from that locked gate, clarity rises. You know what to do because you've eliminated everything that doesn't belong. Finality doesn't restrict you. It releases you because now the only way forward is through. The mind becomes powerful not when it's loud, but when it's clear. What you've heard today is not a call for motivation, it's a challenge to remove confusion. The Stoic path doesn't ask for hype, it asks for finality. A man becomes unstoppable not by doing more, but by deciding deeper. When you burn the ships, close the doors, and eliminate the retreat, you begin to see who you are without safety nets. That clarity is where strength begins. Stoicism teaches us that power is not something you gain, it's something you unlock by removing what weakens you. Indecision, fallback, doubt, and soft exits. The real transformation begins when you stop living as if there's time to revisit your identity. Decide once, then act as if that decision is the law. Speak with purpose, move without retreat, discipline your focus, the rest will follow. Start today with one commitment. Not big, not loud, Just one small act with no backup plan. Then repeat it tomorrow. Let that repetition build a new rhythm, one based on quiet self-command, not emotional reaction. You don't need to prove anything. You only need to hold the line you've drawn. If this message spoke to you, share your story below. Where did you once hesitate, and what decision changed everything? Let others learn from your moment of clarity. And never forget, no plan B isn't about recklessness. It's about alignment. It's about moving with such conviction that the world no longer questions your direction, because your actions already answered. That is the essence of an unstoppable man. And that is what you're training to become, one final decision at a time.